Perugino, and Raphael. The artist is on a par with poets and philosophers. He is a fully fledged humanist. This is the message that Renaissance artists seem to be sending us via their self-portraits. We find the three-quarter pose in the Lucan portrait. But if we look carefully, we can see that the pupils diverge. The right eye looks straight ahead, but the left seems to be glancing slightly to the side.
The position of the pupils seems strangely disconnected, as if the pupil from one eye was looking in a different direction than the other. This particularity is flagrant in St. John the Baptist. It is slightly less obvious, but nonetheless present in the Mona Lisa, and can also be seen in the Lucan portrait.
Is this same asymmetrical gaze proof that the Lucan portrait was painted by Leonardo da Vinci? How can the divergence of the eyes be explained? The answer could be in Leonardo da Vinci's Atlanticus Codex.
Amongst Leonardo's optic experiments, there was what I would call a special invention, the chamber of mirrors.
In the B manuscript of the Codex, a text illustrated with a sketch in Leonardo's hand explains this surprising installation.
If you place 8 full mirrors, which are each 2 fathoms wide and 3 fathoms high, and you put them in a circle to make an octagonal mirror with a circumference of 16 fathoms and a diameter of 5 fathoms, a person on the inside will see each side to infinity.
There was a small figure standing in this octagonal mirror room with a brush in his hand, like this. And this gave the idea that actually it is an artist who is standing inside. But why an artist is standing in the mirror room?
Could Leonardo da Vinci have conceived this installation to do his self-portrait?
To understand the use of the chamber of mirrors in practical terms, and if Leonardo da Vinci would have been able to use it, we have all the elements required to carry out a little virtual experiment. We know how the chamber of mirrors was constructed. We made a 3D reconstruction of Leonardo da Vinci's face, so why not put this 3D face in the chamber of mirrors and see what happens?
During the researches, we found out that this angle with which the portrait is shown matches exactly the position in the mirror room when you look at the angle.
If you look at the place where 2 mirrors of the octagon meet, they form a 22.5-degree angle, therefore a perfect 3/4 angle.
Thanks to this virtual simulation, researchers can now affirm that the orientation of the Lucan painting is precisely 22.5 degrees. But upon closer inspection, something seems off. The nose and mouth seem to be more in profile. How can these differing rotations be explained?
He understood in the 19th that humans are looking with 2 eyes on things. And this created an issue. And it created for him a really enormous issue because he wanted to represent in a painting reality, like we are looking at things. And how to represent something where we are looking normally with 2 eyes.
It is an enormous challenge for the artist because binocular vision enables us to perceive reality in 3 dimensions. It is the merging of 2 images in our brain, one from the right eye and the other from the left, which creates depth perception. As always, it was through experimentation that Leonardo da Vinci found a way to represent binocular vision in a painting. He took a sphere and drew the half seen by one eye and did the same on the other half with the second eye. And he realized that this produced a spatial perception of the object. Each half seems to stand out more.
So, isn't it possible that in the Lucan painting, the 2 images, one from each eye, are superimposed? That would explain why our computer image can never match the painting.
The Lucan portrait could therefore be a combination of 2 points of view. The nose and mouth, oriented on a 40-degree axis, would have been painted with the right eye, and the eyes and the rest of the face oriented on a 22.5-degree axis with the left. This explains the different axes observed between the eyes, nose, and mouth. The virtual simulation showed that in order to merge the 2 points of view, the painter would have to have stood less than 30 centimeters from the junction of 2 mirrors. The light used probably came from a candle placed above to the left, which would explain why the left side of the face is bathed in warm light, while the right side is darker. The difference in the dilation of the pupils confirms this hypothesis. The left pupil near the light source is smaller than the right pupil, which remained in the shade. Did Leonardo da Vinci build the Chamber of Mirrors? Nobody ever found any proof. But the analysis of the Lucan portrait leads us to believe that the idea of this installation could have inspired the making of the painting.
What he did with the Gioconda and what he did with this portrait is he turned slightly around the head so that the line of the nose is hiding one of the most critical parts where you have to blur. And there he had a technique which we call normally as sfumato. He was the first one who did the sfumato based on the binocular vision.
The presence of sfumato in the Lucan portrait could be additional proof that it was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. But contrary to most of the paintings made by the Florentine artist with oils, the Lucan portrait was painted with tempera grassa, a mix of pigments and egg that has the specificity of drying more quickly.
If you have this new thought and idea how you could represent binocular vision, you make trials. You want to try it out how it works. And this could be a very simple explanation why he didn't use the oil technique, which takes much more time.
For him, all his researches are only made to be used in art, because he considered art to be the possibility to visualize all this knowledge. So also with this portrait, it is not just the depiction of himself, but the summary of all his researches, all his knowledge.
Art and science. This is what hides behind the Lucan portrait. The painting's complexity sheds light on the Florentine master's vision. He considered painting to be an art that serves to better understand the world. In Chieti, in southern Italy, a final experiment is carried out. Research on digital fingerprints is entrusted to Professor Luigi Capasso, who collaborated with the police and scientific brigade.
Leonardo da Vinci,
as a person, as a man, Leonardo da Vinci did not leave any traces of himself. As a result, what possibilities are available to us scientists in terms of paleobiological information on this very important Italian personality? The only option is to look for any biological traces on the materials he touched. In this context, the idea of searching for fingerprints is an obvious choice.
Out of 100 pages from Leonardo da Vinci's Bottega, over 200 fragments of fingerprints have been identified. A fingerprint was also found on the lady with an ermine.
To create the shadows of the black pearl necklace on the woman's skin, Leonardo da Vinci, instead of using the usual gray, opted for a different technique. He added a series of black lines, but he didn't paint them. A print of his left thumb drew them. It was certainly an intentional gesture on his part. Therefore, it would have to be his fingerprint. That's where we started, from that fragment.
On a blown-up rendering of the painting, next to the black pearls, several fingerprint fragments are visible.
This is how we produced, configured, and replicated Leonardo da Vinci's left thumbprint. This was the first item of biological information that we've ever had on this great master.
The police decided to do research on the prints on the Lucan portrait. Macro shots are taken across the surface of the painting.
On the Lucan portrait, our colleagues from the police found 3 fragments of fingerprints, 2 on the surface of the painting and 1 on the wooden base. We concentrated on the fingerprint fragment near the feather on the hat. We compared this fingerprint fragment with the reconstructed one. And this comparison highlighted 3 concording details. The prints are partially compatible in technical terms. This print fragment was certainly made at the same time the paint was being applied, because it is embedded. It was left there, printed on the painting before it dried. The paint was still wet.
A print left on wet paint. This gesture takes us back to Leonardo da Vinci's technique, creating shadows with his fingers. Who else but the artist could have put his thumb on a painting that was being worked on? After travelling across Europe for the needs of the investigation, painting was returned to Nicola Barbatelli and his Lucan Museum. The possible attribution of the portrait was an event in the art world. In 2009, Nicola Barbatelli welcomed Professor Carlo Pedretti, one of the most eminent specialists on Leonardo da Vinci's work.
I am always very circumspect and very careful, but also very optimistic. I have great trust in the ability of works of art to tell their story. And this painting is telling its story. I feel there is something here, and we must keep studying it.
The Lucan portrait leaves the museum and is entrusted once more to Giancarlo Napoli. His mission? To erase the feather that had been added later and restore the appearance of the painting during the Renaissance. After this last stage of restoration, the Lucan portrait finally appeared in its original state, without varnish or the white feather.
Discovering the restored painting was an extraordinary moment. The most interesting part was the discovery of the skin tones, the sfumato, and the astounding light effects.